Tony Dattino with you here, trying to get my second reboot here of an article out of the current issue of Scientific American on the impact of noise. And this is going to be my second attempt. My technology skills are not the best in the world, and I'm getting stuff on my screen. But in any case, I'm going to get through this, and I want to cover some key points with you. And I'm going to do this in several parts. I think this is an excellent article in the May issue. I think this is May. Let me make sure I'm giving people. It's the May 2024 issue, and the impact of noise. So it really starts off by talking about what we've learned about the dose of being quiet. If you can't read the word quiet there, it's why is it important for us to have quiet, and what its impact is on our thinking, our learning, our memories. And so who stops and thinks about these things? But this was a really impactful study, and it said there are current recommendations to avoid the health impacts. Now, what are some of the health impacts? We get stressed over a certain amount of noise. We start screaming and yelling. We start the fight or flight response that comes into us here. We get disturbances that create a diversion of what we may be focused or thinking about. It impacts our heart and blood vessels. Now, things about noise impacting our heart. Our blood pressure might go up with that. Our blood vessels, it disturbs, the endocrine system, and it makes it difficult to learn and think. If you're trying to learn, you got kids screaming and noise. It makes me think of one of our mental athletes in the memory championship that won, that when he was studying for the memory championship, he had the kids screaming and yelling at him and jumping up and down so that he learned how to focus and distract the noise, which this article goes on to say, even though you may think you've slept through a peaceful night of sleep, if there's a lot of noise in the street, and buses and fire engines or taxi cab drivers or whatever in your background, you aren't getting the restful sleep that you need. So even when you think you've had a good night's sleep, you may be kidding yourself. So this goes on to talk about all these disturbances that we have that have an impact on our mental function as well as our physical function, which I've already discussed with you, our heart, our blood vessels, our whole immune system. So the organization that started this was looking at the EPA and talking about decibel levels, and that the sound of a campfire from 16 feet away would be what you want to get during the day, and the nighttime decibel level would be the sound of light traffic about 100 feet away. And that would be the gold standard for the kinds of noise that you want to eventually get to. Various organizations have made maps that indicate where quiet and noisy places are using their smartphone apps. So there's apps on your phone that can tell you if you're in a bad or loud zone, which is going to impact your systems when you may not even be aware of it. And that, to me, as I read this article, is the scary part. Noise levels are impacting our different body systems as well as our mental capacities, and we may not even realize it. The noise experts, so this goes on to say, the noise experts all wear earbuds and headphones, and they look to block out the noise, the din that's all around us. And so it's interesting for the scientists that are studying this, they're doing what they can to block out distractive noises that are having an impact on their physical well-being as well as their mental well-being. We talk about hearing, work performance, our sleep, our vision, and blood circulations, all impacted by noises. I'm reading this article, I'm just dumbfounded by the impact that noises have about us. And I think to the lawnmower crew, I live in a residential area, and I will tell you, when the lawnmower guys are coming and they're in between two houses, the noise level in the house is, I don't make phone calls or I don't do my Zooms. When the lawnmower guys are out here doing their work and they're sweating and it's hot, it's 90 degrees and they're cutting lawns, but they're making a lot of noise. And then they have the edger that comes along later on after the mower comes by, and they all have earbuds in and headsets, which is smart because they're right next to the noise. They're creating the noise. So what are we doing in terms of impacting our vision? Who would stop in our blood circulation? Certainly is going to impact our hearing. I'll give you some data a little bit later on as to what the impacts to hearing are, just with a few minutes of this stuff. So are we aware, certainly, of the sounds about us, but do we understand the impact of the dangers that the sounds pose to us? The EPA estimates that 100 million Americans experience a daily average sound of over 55 decibels, which 55 decibels is halfway between the level of a quiet conversation and one in a restaurant or office. After 24 hours of exposure, average louder than that was loud enough to interfere with activities and cause annoyance. So now we're looking at 55 decibels. The National Science Foundation studied children in the primary schools, and they learned that in New York City, children on the lower floors that were exposed to more noise were less able to distinguish sounds and were reading at lower levels than the children that were at higher levels in the building and had less exposure to the noise. So this was an interesting study that was done in New York City in a 32-story apartment building in schools that are in New York City. Students at school that were 220 feet from an elevated subway with trains that were hurtling every 4.5 minutes had a significant impact if they were on the noisy side of the building and had lower grades than the similar group of students on the other side of the building. I mean, some of this stuff is amazing. Scientists found that among children living near an old airport, so now we're going to look at an airport that was in Munich, and they discovered that the scientists, the children living near the old airport, long-term memory and reading skills improved when the airport closed. But the kids that went to school near the new airport, which were creating all the noise of the jets coming, landing, whatever, their hormone stress levels increased. And what we know about stress and hormone levels increases, it's a detriment to our body's immune systems and our mental capacities. So you look at this and you discover it's got links to heart disease, diabetes, and the exposure that we have from planes and trucks. Bad news. It impacts our cognitive and emotional responses. So the louder the noises, the more emotional the adrenaline flows and pushes up. You hear, ah! Look, just watch a basketball game right now, or a hockey match that's going on. Baseball's a little bit more subdued. So if you watch sports, football games, you listen to the cheering and yelling, that noise level has an impact on you, and it can eventually increases the stress hormones and the neurotransmitters. It adds to inflammation and blood flow disturbances, and you wind up with heart disease and diabetes. Who thinks about this stuff, and who studies this? This is amazing when I look at this stuff and think about what goes on. So they have a table here, which I thought was excellent. Safe noise levels. So obviously you're breathing. As you breathe in and out, a ticking watch, you hear the watch going by, just barely. A soft whisper. A hum of the refrigerator. They have more quiet refrigerators these days. Who would think of buying a refrigerator that has a lower hum and leads to your health and your impact? Normal conversation or an air conditioner sound, all in the green. A washing machine, dishwasher. Now, I've had several different washing machines and dishwashers, and some of the new ones today have decibel levels below 55. They may cost a little bit more money, but boy, when I just recently bought one, all I knew was somebody told me, make sure it's below 55. And I did, and I'm glad, and the same with the clothes washer and dryer. And city traffic, if you're inside the car. Now, what happens if you're not? Now you're into the red zone. Lawnmowers and leaf blowers. If you've got a house and anywhere's near grass and lawns, motorcycles, this is all red stuff now. These are all in the red. Subway trains or a car horn or going to a sporting event. So who thinks to put earplugs on when you go to the sporting event? Boy, the crowd starts yelling and screaming, and they have bugles and bands and got footballs, got cheerleaders, and boy, the noise levels. The maximum level for a person listening device, a loud radio, stereo, or television. I thought about when I do some of my house chores, I usually blast up the radio and listen to louder music. How about if you're near a firehouse or a police car and you hear sirens? I think of times when I've been on business travel and I'm in the city and you hear the sirens in the fire trucks at night, and boy, you wake up and you say, well, are they coming here? And last but not least, well, we all love those 4th of July fireworks. Here I live by Disney, and we get the fireworks every night at 9 o'clock when it's summertime, and now we're even getting them at 11. You say, what are they doing shooting fireworks at 11 o'clock? These are all considered to be in the red zone, and so you want to minimize your experience with these, and off you go. And so as I read through this, some of this stuff is you don't even have to be exposed to some of this stuff for more than 5 minutes, and it's already beginning to have an impact on your hearing. How about these kids that wear these earbuds and they have their music blasting, or these cars that drive by with music that the whole neighborhood hears? Who stops to think about noise and its impact on unhealthy sound levels and its impact on our heart, our stress, our sleep, our vision, and diabetes? This is the first part. I've got, there are more pages in here, more lessons to share with you, and I'll be picking that up in part 2, and I may do a part 3. There's just so many interesting things in this particular issue of Scientific American that I think people just need to know about. And so the purpose of my Live with Tony Facebooks and YouTubes are to get people to understand things that are impacting their mental health, and in this case, it's their physical health as well. We'll see you back here on Friday. I had to think about what day of the week this was for a second.